Today we're talking about mixed depth square twists, and that mixed depth part is coming from the pleat depths. So typically we have all the same pleat depth going around our twist, but in the mixed depth twists we actually have two different pleat depths, one of which is twice as much as the other, which lets us have these twists where some edges are twice as long as the others. So let's zoom into these two examples first, and then we'll dive into folding a practice piece that is not nearly so hard to fold as these two. So here I have two different ways of having these four two-fold rotationally symmetric mixed depth square twists coming to a single point. And you can see what happens in between is different. And that's because in the pink one, the pleats that are coming together all at the same place are the single depth pleats. And in the yellow one, the pleats that are coming together all in the same place are the double depth pleats. And we can see that when we flip over on the back. Here we have the standard sized closed square. Here we have that same closed square, but there's two grid spacings. It's easier to see when you compare to the neighboring folds, two grid spacings per edge. So how do we construct these mixed depth twists? First, so I've got my 32-fold square grid, and I'm going to fold in half in both directions to identify the center of the paper, just so I know where I'm working, so that when you're folding things, you can reference to the same point. And the first thing I'm going to do is draw out how I construct these twists. So you might have seen in the mixed depth rhombus video that the mixed depth rhombus is two small rhombuses put together. Well, the mixed depth square is going to be two squares put together, but instead of doing closed ones, I'm going to do open ones. And I'm drawing the pleat extension form first to make sure I'm doing it in the handedness that I want. And so this is going to put the corner of the mixed depth twist right at the center of the paper. And I'm going to add another block of this. So first I'll add the valleys on the initial twist. And now I'll add in the mountains on the new twist. And their attendant valleys. So you'll notice that right in here and in here, we have a mountain on top of a valley, and those cancel out so that we end up with a mountain and a valley two spaces apart from each other. And then these in the middle here, where we have these pleats going vertically, kind of in the middle of these two twists that are now merged, we're going to ignore those folds so that we have, we're going to go ahead and pick up the paper now. We have four pleats coming in, and before we fully start like squashing or anything, I want to call attention to the fact that the mountains for the double depth pleats are on the same grid line. So those two are on the same grid line, and then those other two mountains are 1, 2, 3 grid spacings apart. So that's going to be our cue whenever we're folding this twist. The double depth mountains are on the same grid line, and the other two, the single depth mountains, are 3 spacings apart. So with double depth plates horizontal and single depth plates vertical, I can get this nice pillow shape that I can press from the top and squash. And so if you can combine 2 rhombuses to make a double depth rhombus, you can combine 2 squares to make a double depth, or sorry, mixed depth, not double depth, mixed depth square. You can really combine any 2 shapes as long as those edges are going to line up. And actually, if the edges don't line up, then you can really say that a rhombus twist, a closed rhombus, is 2 triangles mushed together. So this is a pretty general operation that you can use on whatever twists you can get to fit together. So that is what's going on for the first twist. And now I'm going to flip the paper over. I'm going to keep the right-hand side on the right, flip top to bottom. And I'm going to choose a certain spacing to place my next repeat. I happened to draw a crease pattern for this earlier, and it turns out that if I am going along the double depth pleat, I want to come 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces out to hit the corner, and it turns out that that is at the end of this long slit to hit the corner of the next twist. And if that's the corner, then that is where the vertical valley is going to come. And my vertical direction is my single depth direction, so my mountain is going to be 1 spacing further out. If I set up that pleat, I know my double depth direction is going to continue with the mountain going through on the same grid line. And I'm going to count 1, 2, 3 grid spacings out to run my vertical mountain up. And again, the vertical pleat has a single depth and the horizontal pleat has double depth. And once that's in place, I need to kind of puff it up a little bit to get everything laying flat, and I can squash that twist. So from here, what I want to be doing is making a loop around that central twist. So I'm going to be alternating what side of the paper I'm working on. I'm really going to be alternating these 2 twists that we've seen, and I've already chosen the horizontal spacing between twists. Now I need to choose the vertical spacing. And so again, I'm going to flip top to bottom, keeping the right-hand side on my right hand. And I'm going to grab this vertical pleat. And what I saw in the crease pattern I looked at before I started recording is that if we have 2 spacings, so just up to the corner of that existing twist, between our 2 twists, that is going to end up with a column, basically, of these twists stacked on top of each other. Now, you don't have to do things that densely, but that would mean that you need more grid divisions to get the same amount of repeat. So what I'm going to do here is make sure that when I run this valley through, I'm going to reverse the pleat ordering. So I'm going to let the valley run through first, and this is horizontal, so it's going to be a double depth valley. So I bring up my mountain 2 spaces above, make sure that is laying completely flat on top of my target pleat. And I might need to release some other tension in the paper, like letting that mountain continue out the other side before I can close again that initial pleat. And I'm going to let my vertical mountain come 3 spaces over to the left. And this is going to mean that the valley is going to be right where this folded mountain currently is, which just unfolds that mountain and lets it lie down. And then we can bring up our new twist sitting on top. So there we have another twist. And I'm going to follow my pleat overlap, flipping the paper over top to bottom. I now have my overlap that I need to open up. And when I'm opening this up, I need to recognize that I'm not going to be running my vertical mountain straight down from there. I'm going to be running it 3 spaces over. And that'll make it a lot easier to open things. The other thing I need to recognize is that down in here, I need to refold that mountain that was the valley on the other side that we took out. And then I can set up my single depth vertical pleat, my double depth horizontal pleat, and get everything squashed and in place. And so I'm going to continue going around and around and around that central twist. And we were just here. I'm actually going to flip left to right this time to put that next set of parallel pleats on my right hand side. I'm going to start with the bottom one here, and who knows, I might decide to go the other direction around next time, but here we are, so may as well. And like I saw with the previous time around, our corner is going to come to the end of the slit, which means our mountain is 1 space in from the corner. And I'm going to reorder this pleat overlap to make sure that I'm not trapping paper underneath as I fold my twist. And I'm really needing to get a lot of my paper set up first before I can wrap. And I'm wrapping 2 spacings from the pleat plus another from this wrap underneath. So this is really coming around and causing a mess because it's wanting to self-intersect, but if I layer the paper properly, if I make sure that this layer, and I did flip over, if I make sure that layer's on top, then I can get that next twist in place more easily. Okay, then flipping back over here, I'm going to need my vertical mountain to come over 3 spaces. So I'm doing that right now even before I open the pleat overlap, because I know when I do open the overlap, it's going to need to be there anyways. And then I can have my double depth pleat, and I can either tuck this into the existing layers or wrap it around the existing layers Either way works fine, although it is a test of your grid precision. And then I can continue onwards, working now on this set of parallel pleats. And instead of rotating them to my right hand, I'm going to keep the single depth vertical, double depth horizontal pattern that we have going on. So I'm going to start with this pleat and work over. And I'm going to need to have that corner coming and passing through. So anytime we have square twists on opposite sides of the paper and we're working in loops around the center, we want to have our first pleat overlap reordered. And that's just a general statement, no matter what kind of exotic squares you're working with. And then flipping over, and here my new pleat is going to be coming through from the corner of the existing twist over. So I need to set that up and make sure that my new vertical is 3 grid spacings away. And just like before, I need to make sure that I'm keeping all the pleats of the twist on the other side, and I might need to restore some of those that were kind of tucked under and away when it was first put in. And flipping back over, I've got another twist here to put in, and my vertical is going to need to come over 3 grid spacings, and here I need to restore that pleat that had been shifted in the previous twist, and I'm setting up this double depth that's coming out over the existing pleat structure. So that was an easier direction to add new twists than going up and down these columns. And we can take advantage of that. So for the next repeat, instead of working around in a ring around the center. So this is our center, and we did a full ring around, although it does look rather elongated. And I should say, since one direction is using double depth pleats and the other direction's using single depth pleats, I expect our end result to be a lot shorter than it is wide. So we have some choices of where to go next. We can approach this in a couple ways. One is to try and reduce the amount of layers that we have building up under these twists. And so that would mean, okay, do all of the repeats in this direction as much as we can in order to get rid of those layers. Another approach is to go in the opposite direction and just accumulate more and more and more layers. I'm going to see what happens, and I should say I've never folded this particular pattern before. I'm going to see what happens if I go and try and remove some layers. So I know my corner is going to come to the corner of the existing twist, which means my valley is going to come down through here. And when I'm opening things up, I want to reorder that pleat overlap and 3 spaces over from my mountain, I'm going to run a mountain up above. And I'm really wrapping around as I bring this in, and it ends up being 4 grid spacings from my mountain to the eventual valley. And I'm not reordering this overlap, I'm just letting it fall into place. Okay, so I had a reordered overlap in here, and I have kind of an overlap that's just falling into place over there. When I flip over to the opposite side, I think I want to deal with this one first. So I'm going to open that up, and as I do, so the mountain was here. As I do, I see that kind of ghost of mountain past that wants to be there, and I'm going to allow that. I'm going to make sure that my mountain is shifting over 3 spaces, and then that my horizontal pleat is still double depth, and I can squash that twist. And now I'll come over here and deal with the partial twist that's going to be coming up. I'm going to set this pleat back to where it needs to be for the twist on the other side. And I'm going to kind of recognize that, okay, the corner needs to be at the end of the slit. This is going to look like a partial open square. And really, we saw from the setup at the beginning, that's exactly what it is. It just had another open square grafted onto it to make the rest of these long ones. And from there, I could remove even more of these overlapped layers by putting in another partial twist with the valley right there, because that's going to be the corner. And this one, I'm really referencing that those open square twists go over 1 and up 2, so I can know where that corner is. And now when I flip back to the opposite side, I'm going to get a full twist in here. And here again, I'm referencing that my valley needs to come to the corner of the neighboring twist. And that's what's telling me where the mountain needs to go, even more than the counting 3. And so I'm going to let my double depth mountain continue on through. Let the valley of the double depth pleat below come into being. And this is going to be kind of close to the edge, but we're going to make it for a whole twist. And I can clean it up a little at the corner if I feel the need. Okay, so that really got rid of all of the extra layers that we were seeing. Like, we have a bunch of extra layers here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers of paper right here. That's what we're trying to get rid of. And it's easier then to go in the other direction. So coming up here, I'm going to do the same thing, starting with the next twist up above. I'm going to open things up to get my vertical pleat set up. This is going to need a corresponding vertical pleat going down, which is causing this paper to wrap and then have double depth down below. And then the horizontal mountain carries through, and I get a valley 2 spaces above. But since we had all those layers, I have another valley 2 spaces above that, which is going to take precedence and wrap all the way around. And I just want to point out with my layers here, I'm letting this really large pleat cover whatever's on the back. And flipping back to this side, I'm going to iron out my pleat and flip over to the back, where I'll deal with this large overlap that's covering things up first, with the valley coming to the corner of the neighboring twist. I'll get that vertical in place, and then open up the pleat overlap. My horizontal mountain continues through, and the next valley is 2 spaces below. With that set up, I can go ahead and squash this mixed depth square twist. And now I have an overlap left over here, which I can open up and set up the start of the next column of squares. Again, using the exact same spacing, although the spacing from the existing twist was already set in place by the fact that I'm working off of an overlap. And now I still have a bunch of layers here. It's 2, 4, 6, 7 layers still. And so I'm going to continue working and getting more twists done until I'm back to this situation up top where I have kind of wide open spaces relative to this very constrained space. So coming in here, I'm going to run my vertical pleat down and have the associated other vertical going up, and again wrapping that corner, and my horizontal mountain carries through. The valley goes 2 spaces below that, but that is at the mountain of the pleat underneath. So the valley for that pleat underneath is going to be the valley that I actually fold. And then I can set up the rest of my twist. And flip over, rinse and repeat. I'm going to have that vertical going up, let the horizontal continue through, set up that horizontal valley up above, make sure that the valley for the twist on the back, or sorry, the mountain for the twist on the back that was a valley on the other side, and gets back in the right place, and squash that twist. And that's basically past the initial move 1 column over. And I've got that overlap in here where I'm going to reset the pleat for the twist below, and we're going to get a partial square just like we did the first time around. And flipping over, actually no, not flipping over, I can get another partial right up here, same way I did on the other side of the paper in both senses. Other side as in left and also on the back. And then flipping over, I can get another whole mixed depth square twist. And I really want to hold on to this flap that's hanging out down below, because that is going to really want to wiggle out and get out from under my twist and basically cause trouble. But we can get it under control. Not a problem. And then we're out of grid to do more on this column. So I'm free now to run my repeats across. So I'm going to run through this kind of quickly because we have seen this process already. And the horizontal pleats are my double depth pleats. So that's going to set up a partial twist in there and then flipping over. And I'm going to rotate it around as well so that I'm running the pleat out towards my right hand side. And again, we have this double depth pleat, and then we close the single depth one on top of it. We'll actually get a whole twist on this repeat. And then it'll be a little bit clearer on the next repeat. And I probably should have done the other direction first, or sorry, the other side of the paper first, because that side has more space between the twists and the edge. Then we get the next one. And flipping over, we're going to repeat the process, popping the existing pleat down where we need our valley to run through. And then the key thing to look out for here is we end up with a double depth pleat going up, but that's because it was a single and then the other single combined with it from down below. And take a quick water break. Excuse me. So yeah, these columns are shaping up nicely. And flip. And repeat. And these moves that I'm doing don't really have to be done in any particular order. They just all need to be done before you squash. And flipping over, we have one more to do. Now, if my grid was a lot larger, then I would have caused, by doing this last twist, an area where I had those double depth pleats nesting together and being really thick, and I would go and resolve that before coming back and doing another pass on the easy direction, because you don't want that like building and building and building and building up. You want to get that resolved as soon as you can. And so I'm basically going to do the same thing for this corner of the paper as a whole. finishing up these twists before I go then and do the same thing on the other side. And flip, and I'll get a partial twist here. And what I'm recognizing on this one is that, excuse me. Maybe I should keep some cough drops in my office. What I'm noticing is that the vertical going up is actually on the edge of the paper. So I won't be able to like really find it. But the corner of the twist should come right there to the edge. Oh, this is a cool effect. These partial twists are all cut off in a line. That's neat. So now it's time to basically do the same thing on this side of the paper. I'm going to check here, and there actually is a partial twist that I can add in here before I go and do everything else. And here again, the mountain is on the edge of the paper, so it's a bit hard to tell where things need to go. But we can figure it out by setting up the pleat and then using the neighboring twist as a guide. Then flipping back, and I'll rotate so this pleat is going towards my right hand. I'll set up the next one. And at this point, it's really the same process over and over and over, which I'm going to go ahead and do because, well, may as well, and I want y'all to see the finished result. So I've got that one, and then flipping over, I'll have my new horizontal over and setting up the next twist. One of the great things about these twists is they're very easy to squash once you have them set up. It's not like well, not like a hybrid square, shall we say. And then flipping over. One of the nice things is that this horizontal mountain is already there for us. It's the one that's going to continue all the way across. And yeah, I find that highly convenient. Really helps with finding the placement. And so I had said something earlier about doing this operation on more than just square and rhombus twists. Next week I'm going to be talking about the twofold mixed depth hexagon twist. And there's actually two different options for that. One with two double depth pleats and one with 4 double depth pleats. The hexagons are a little bit different in how they're composed than the square case and the rhombus case. It's more about recognizing the symmetries in the twist, and that you don't have to keep everything the same. And one of the ways to think about it, if you want to check out a book, is Ben Parker's Twist, Tilings, and Tessellations, I think it is. But Ben Parker's book, he has a notation system for twists and how to make them kind of generatively. And that's basically what we're doing here. I'm going to make sure that that valley is actually on a grid line as I set up this partial twist. And now I have the next direction of repeats. I know I can get something in here because all of these are 2 spaces wide and this one is 4. So I can definitely get something in here. Flipping over, I can get that. So anyways, Ben Parker's notation system is really talking about the archetype of the twist and seeing what the heck is going on. And so when I'm planning tessellations, when I'm designing new things, this mixed depth square, I use a rectangle tile for to show which directions are double depth. So when we had the hybrid square twists, those were still a square tile, like I was talking about last week, but these mixed depth squares are actually rectangle tiles, and it's important to make the distinction because when you're planning things, you really want it to work out. And if you don't have all of your double depth pleats going to places with double depth pleats to receive them, it's not going to work very well. And flipping over, excuse me. I've got another partial twist, again lining up on that continuum. And I can get a partial twist down below as well. Coming up, completing that corner, really a swivel. And there we have it, the whole tessellation. And I will say I didn't come up with a special name for this one. I just called it mixed square practice. And yeah, this is really the highest density of these twists that you can practice in a straightforward way. So looking at those examples again, one of the things that you'll notice is that with this one, you don't actually see the slits in the mixed up squares because so much paper has been taken out away from the slit. And that makes this a lot harder to fold than what we just did. And then this one, what you'll notice is these kind of X's on the diagonal. And this is a tessellation that I'll be talking more about on Instagram this week. But these are cursed square twists, and I do have a video on those as well. So yeah, and these guys needed full pre-creasing, and therefore I needed to pre-crease the whole thing, where if it was any other twist in that position, I would not have needed to. But in order to get another twist in that position, I would have needed to not have this alignment. So I decided to take one for the team and pre-crease. So, yep, that is what's going on today, and I hope you enjoy practicing your mixed depth square twists. So until next week, happy folding, and I will see you then.